I was about to knock on my parents' door when I heard them say to my brother, "Don't worry about the debt, your sister will handle it. She never says no to family." I quietly turned around and transferred every last dollar out of my account. What they didn't know was, I was standing at my parents' front door, a $15,000 bonus check from work clutched in my hand, ready to share some incredible news. But what I overheard through that door didn't just shatter my heart, it exposed a betrayal so calculated, it made my entire world crumble. The unthinkable betrayal, a shattered reality. My name is Vanessa, and at 32, I thought I knew my family. I was the responsible one, the nurse who worked grueling shifts during the pandemic, the daughter who never said no when family needed help. I always put them first. Always. My identity, it turned out, was deeply intertwined with being useful and self-sacrificing for them. It was a role I'd accepted, believing that my value was somehow tied to what I could provide. That Tuesday, I was buzzing with excitement. I'd just received this huge bonus, a recognition from Chicago Memorial Hospital for years of hard work, especially through the relentless grind of the pandemic. After 3 grueling years of putting myself at risk and watching colleagues fall ill, this recognition felt like someone finally acknowledging the toll it had taken. My first thought wasn't about what I would buy for myself. It was about sharing the news with Mom and Dad. Despite our complicated dynamics, their approval still mattered to me. I even considered offering to help my mother with a kitchen renovation she'd been talking about for years. That's just who I was, always thinking about how to share my good fortune. But as I reached for the doorknob, my hand froze midair. I heard my father's voice, clear as day, telling my brother Alexander, "Don't worry about the debt. We'll make your sister pay. She'll never say no to family." My heart didn't just sink, it shattered. In that instant, the comfortable illusion of my family as a safe, unconditional space crumbled. The very people who were supposed to protect and nurture me were, in fact, plotting to exploit me. It was a profoundly disorienting and traumatic realization. The weight of a label. Growing up Vanessa from the outside, we were the picture-perfect suburban Chicago family. We lived in a modest 2-story home with blue siding. My dad, Harold, worked as an accountant, bringing home a steady income that kept us comfortable but never wealthy. My mom, Elaine, taught 3rd grade, coming home each day with stories and glitter-covered clothes. On paper, we were the epitome of a middle-class American family. But beneath that perfect facade, a subtle, insidious pattern had been forming since childhood. My brother Alexander, for years younger than me, and I were treated differently in ways so subtle that for years, I convinced myself I was imagining things. From the moment he was born, Alexander seemed to capture my parents' hearts in a way I never could. Where I was practical and studious, Alexander was charming and adventurous. I followed rules. He broke them with a smile that somehow earned forgiveness instead of punishment. They called him their free spirit and me, their responsible one. It sounded like a compliment, didn't it? But that label became a heavy, heavy burden. It wasn't just about chores or schoolwork. It implied a deeper emotional and financial responsibility for the family's well-being, often at my own expense. The disparity was clear in concrete ways. When I turned 16, I maintained straight A's, played volleyball, and worked weekends at a local pharmacy to save for college. My parents contributed $2,000 toward a used Toyota with over 100,000 miles on it, but only after I saved $3,000 of my own money. I was grateful, truly. That car represented freedom. But 4 years later, Alexander turned 16, and they surprised him with a brand new Honda Civic. No savings required, no discussion about responsibility. When I dared to mention the difference, my mom just shrugged. "You were so independent, Vanessa. Alexander needs more support." This reinforced the dynamic. I didn't need support because I was independent, while Alexander was implicitly encouraged to remain dependent. College followed the same pattern. I earned partial scholarships and worked 30 hours a week while maintaining a 3.8 GPA in my nursing program. I graduated with $12,000 in student loans, which I diligently paid off within 5 years. Alexander, meanwhile, attended an expensive private university where he changed majors 3 times before dropping out after 2.5 years. My parents paid his full tuition and never asked for repayment when he wasted their investment. It was like their investment in him just vanished while I was expected to shoulder my own burden. My career, on the other hand, was a steady climb. After nursing school, I worked my way up from staff nurse to charge nurse to my current position as nurse manager at Chicago Memorial Hospital. I put in extra hours, volunteered for the difficult shifts no one wanted, and built a reputation for excellence. During the pandemic, I was working 60-hour weeks, putting myself at risk, watching colleagues fall ill. That $15,000 bonus? It was the hospital's way of saying, thank you for everything. Alexander's career? A string of entrepreneurial ventures that never went anywhere. There was the custom t-shirt business that lasted 4 months, the food delivery app he abandoned, and most recently, an import business dealing in luxury items that he was suspiciously vague about. Each failure was cushioned by my parents' financial support, always explained away as bad timing or learning experiences. This consistent pattern of bailing him out, without requiring accountability, actively prevented Alexander from developing self-sufficiency. Despite recognizing the favoritism, I maintained a close relationship with my family. Sunday dinners at my parents' house remained a tradition. I called my mother several times a week. I remembered birthdays and anniversaries with thoughtful gifts. Family meant everything to me, and I was willing to overlook the inequities to preserve those bonds. I was caught in a classic case of cognitive dissonance, where the desire to believe my family was good and worth preserving clashed with the painful reality of their unfair treatment. To alleviate this discomfort, I chose to prioritize the illusion of harmony, even at great personal cost. The plot unveiled, an ATM with a guilt trigger at 32, I had finally achieved some personal stability. I purchased a modest 2-bedroom condo in a decent neighborhood. My savings account had grown steadily as I lived below my means and planned carefully for the future. I drove the same reliable car for 10 years. My life wasn't flashy, but it was secure. Something I had created through years of discipline and hard work. But looking back, the warning signs about Alexander's financial situation were everywhere in recent months. Hushed phone calls that ended when I entered the room. My mother borrowing $2,000 for a home repair that I later saw no evidence of. My father asking casual questions about my salary and savings. I ignored these red flags. I wanted to believe my family wouldn't deliberately take advantage of me. That belief was about to be utterly shattered. The day that changed everything started ordinarily enough. Tuesday, April 15th, tax day. How ironically appropriate, right? I just finished a brutal 12-hour shift at the hospital, but I was on cloud 9 because of that bonus. I decided to surprise my parents, maybe even offer to help with my mom's kitchen renovation she'd been talking about for years. That's just who I was. I arrived at their colonial-style home around 5:30 p.m., using the spare key to let myself in, as I'd done hundreds of times before. Mom, Dad, anyone home? I called out but received no answer. Their cars were in the driveway, so I knew they were around. I figured they might be in the backyard garden and decided to check upstairs first. As I approached their bedroom door at the end of the hallway, I heard muffled voices. I was about to knock when Alexander's distinctive voice, with its slightly whiny undertone, cut through clearly. It's $75,000, Dad. I know it's a lot, but this time it's different. My hand paused midair. $75,000? My dad's voice rose, Alexander James Wilson. That's more than I make in a year. How could you possibly get into that much debt again? Alexander blamed a supplier, said he needed cash now. My mom, worried, asked if he was in trouble. He just brushed it off. No, Mom, it's just business. Then my dad said, we don't have that kind of money. We remortgaged the house to cover your last venture, and we're still paying off the loan for the one before that. My stomach clenched. They remortgaged the house? They never told me. My mom suggested some investment opportunity in Florida, a timeshare presentation they attended. I bit my lip to keep from groaning. My parents were terrible with money, always falling for every get-rich-quick scheme that came their way. That would take too long, Alexander whined. I need the cash now. What about Vanessa? She must have savings. At the sound of my name, I pressed closer to the door. My father started, your sister works hard for her money. And for a split second, I felt a surge of gratitude. But then he continued, but yes, she's always been responsible with her finances. And she just got promoted. My mother chimed in, and didn't she mention something about a bonus coming up? She probably has at least $50,000 saved by now. The gratitude curdled into pure disbelief. They were talking about my money they had no right to, as if it were a family ATM. So, we'll ask her to loan it to me, Alexander said, like it was the simplest thing in the world. Problem solved. My father hesitated. She might hesitate at such a large amount. She's been asking more questions lately about those other loans. And then, My mother's voice dropped to this conspiratorial whisper I'd never heard before. Don't worry about that. Vanessa has always been a pushover when it comes to family. We'll just tell her it's for Alexander's medical bills or something. She's a nurse. She'll understand healthcare costs. Alexander brightened, or we could tell her it's for a business opportunity she could invest in. She's always going on about retirement planning. A cold, icy sensation spread through my chest. My own family was plotting to lie to me. This wasn't just about money, it was about weaponizing trust and manipulating my perception of reality. However we approach it, my father said firmly, don't worry about the debt, Alexander. We'll make your sister pay. She'll never say no to family. And then, they laughed. That sound hit me like a physical blow. Good old responsible Vanessa, Alexander snickered. Always there to clean up my messes. My mother added, she does love to feel needed. And my father, the final dagger, and if she hesitates, I'll remind her of all we did for her growing up. Guilt always works with Vanessa. Their words confirmed my deepest, darkest suspicion. My reliability wasn't respected, it was exploited. They didn't see me as a successful, independent woman. They saw me as an ATM with a convenient guilt trigger. This wasn't just an isolated incident, it was a systemic role I had been unknowingly playing for years, reinforced by their collective understanding of my responsible nature. My vision blurred with tears. A wave of nausea hit me so hard, I had to press my hand against the wall for support. My heart pounded in my ears, nearly drowning out their continued plotting. The hallway seemed to spin around me as 32 years of family memories reorganized themselves into a horrifying pattern of manipulation and favoritism I could no longer deny. I backed away from that door, silently, grateful for the plush hallway carpet that muffled my footsteps. I couldn't confront them. Not then. I was too shattered. I needed space to think, to process this profound betrayal. As I crept down the stairs and out the front door, closing it with the gentlest click, a strange calm began to replace the initial shock. By the time I reached my car, parked a little way down the street, determination had started to burn through the hurt. They thought they knew me. Predictable, reliable Vanessa, who always said yes. But they had no idea what I was capable of when pushed too far. This was my breaking point, a moment of self-actualization where the cost of maintaining a dysfunctional status quo outweighed the fear of change. The first steps to freedom, reclaiming control the 20-minute drive home, was a blur. I don't remember stopping at traffic lights or navigating turns. My mind just replayed those fragments. She'll never say no to family. Good old responsible Vanessa. Guilt always works with Vanessa. When I finally parked in my condo building's garage, my phone buzzed. A text from my mom. Are you coming for dinner Sunday? Making your favorite lasagna. The casual normalcy of it, knowing what I now knew, made me laugh bitterly. I almost hyped out my rage, but I resisted. Strategic thinking, not emotional reaction, would guide me forward. This immediate pivot from victim to agent of change was my first step in reclaiming control. I replied with a simple lie, got called back to the hospital for an emergency. Call tomorrow. Then I turned off notifications and entered my apartment. This space, my sanctuary, now felt like the only safe place in the world. I kicked off my shoes and just sank onto the couch, finally letting the tears come. But they weren't just tears of hurt. They burned with anger too. As the initial shock subsided, my analytical nurse's mind started cataloging previous financial help I'd provided to my family. This wasn't just about the $75,000 Alexander needed now, it was about a pattern. I pulled out my laptop and opened a spreadsheet, methodically documenting every dollar I could remember giving my family over the past decade. The total made me physically ill. $48,600. Nearly $50,000 I would never see again, all while I worked extra shifts and lived frugally. The pattern was unmistakable once I saw it laid out in rows and columns. $5,000 for my parents' 30th anniversary trip to Hawaii, a loan never repaid. $3,000 for Alexander's car repairs after his accident, which I later discovered happened while he was driving drunk. $7,000 toward my parents' roof replacement, which mysteriously covered exactly the amount of Alexander's outstanding tuition bill from his second failed attempt at college. Each request had come wrapped in crisis language. Each time I'd been praised for being such a help and promised repayment. Each time repayment was conveniently forgotten until I brought it up, only to be made to feel petty for mentioning it. Family helps family, my mother would say if I asked about repayment. When you need something someday, we'll be there for you. But now I understood the truth. The support only flowed one way, toward Alexander and my parents' enablement of him. I reached for my phone and called the one person I trusted completely, Jessica. Jessica Andrews had been my best friend since nursing school. Unlike me, she came from a family that respected boundaries and celebrated her independence. She'd questioned my family's treatment of me many times over the years, but I'd always defended them. "What's wrong, Van? You sound terrible." Jessica's concern flowed through the phone. For the next hour, I poured out everything. The overheard conversation, the planned manipulation, the history of financial exploitation. Jessica listened without interrupting, only occasionally making sounds of outrage. "I hate to say I told you so," she finally said when I finished. "But I've been watching them take advantage of you for years. Remember when your car broke down last winter and you asked if they could help with the tow? And your dad said they were a little tight right now? That was the same week they bought Alexander that expensive leather jacket for Christmas." Her words were a crucial external validation, helping me dismantle the cognitive dissonance I'd maintained. I made excuses for them, I admitted. I thought if I was useful enough, helpful enough, they'd value me the way they value him. "Honey, they value what you can give them, not who you are," Jessica said. "And it's not your fault. You've been conditioned since childhood to be the responsible one, the caretaker. They exploit your good heart." Her words hit home with painful accuracy. I had spent my life trying to earn the same unconditional love they gave Alexander freely. "What do I do now?" I asked. "First, you protect yourself," Jessica said firmly. "Move your money somewhere they can access it. Create documentation of all those past loans. And for God's sake, don't give them another penny." After hanging up, I spent hours reviewing bank statements and gathering evidence of previous financial transactions. Sleep was impossible. Every family memory replayed with new context. My mother praising me for being so mature about money while setting me up as the family bankroll. My father proudly telling his friends about my career success while calculating my earning potential for Alexander's benefit. By morning, exhaustion had hardened into resolve. I showered, dressed in my most professional outfit, and prepared to take back control of my life. The nurse who had managed a critical care unit during a pandemic wasn't going to be manipulated by her family anymore. My decisive actions to secure my finances were not just about protecting money, they were symbolic acts of reclaiming personal autonomy. The moment Valley Credit Union opened at 9 a.m., I was waiting at the door. I'd chosen my outfit carefully, a charcoal pencil skirt and burgundy blouse that projected confidence and competence. "I need to speak with a personal banker immediately," I told the receptionist. "It's regarding account security." Within minutes, I was seated across from Stephanie Miller, a financial advisor with a no-nonsense bob and shrewd eyes. "I need to secure my finances from potential unauthorized access," I explained, keeping my voice steady despite the emotion churning beneath the surface. "I'd like to open new accounts that no one in my family can potentially access and transfer my funds immediately." Stephanie efficiently walked me through the process of opening new accounts with enhanced security features, accounts my parents couldn't possibly guess the passwords to or talk their way into accessing by claiming an emergency. "I'd also like to review who's listed as beneficiaries on all my accounts," I added, realizing I'd probably listed my parents or Alexander years ago. 2 hours later, I left the credit union with my savings, including my recent bonus, secured in new accounts. I'd also removed my mother as the authorized user on my credit card, something I'd done years ago when she claimed she needed it just for emergencies. The small card-shaped imprint had faded in my wallet, where I'd carried that credit card for 7 years, rarely using it myself because my mother occasionally made purchases that strained my credit limit. Arming for battle, emotional preparation. My next stop was the office of Diana Patel, a financial advisor Jessica had recommended. Diana's office was warm but professional. "Jessica mentioned you needed urgent financial guidance," Diana said after introductions. I took a deep breath and shared a condensed version of my situation. "Unfortunately, this isn't uncommon," Diana said sympathetically. "Family financial exploitation happens more often than people realize." This normalization of my experience was incredibly validating. "Let's create a comprehensive plan to protect your assets." Over the next 3 hours, Diana helped me document every loan I'd made to my family, complete with dates, amounts, and any evidence I had. We discussed the legal concept of promissory notes and how without them, my previous financial assistance would likely be considered gifts in the eyes of the law. "Moving forward, if you ever decide to help family financially again, we'll create proper documentation," Diana explained. "But based on what you've told me, I strongly advise against providing any further financial assistance to them." Diana also helped me draft a financial boundary document, a clear statement of what I would and would not do regarding money and family. It wasn't legally binding, but the act of writing it down strengthened my resolve. For years, I'd operated under unspoken family rules that entitled them to my resources. Now, I was creating my own rules. Reading these simple statements, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. These boundaries were an act of self-definition, a powerful assertion of my autonomy. Here's what I wrote down. I will not provide loans or gifts above $100 to family members. Any financial assistance must be documented with repayment terms. I will not co-sign loans or provide access to my credit. I will not discuss specific details of my income, savings, or financial planning with family. I reserve the right to say no to any financial request without explanation. By late afternoon, I was mentally exhausted, but feeling more empowered than I had in years. I stopped at a local cafe for a late lunch, reviewing the boundary statements I'd created with Diana. My phone had been buzzing periodically throughout the day. 5 missed calls from my mother, 2 from my father, and a text from Alexander asking if I was coming to dinner on Sunday because he had big news to share. The transparent setup made me both sad and angry. That evening, I had a virtual appointment with Dr. Carter, a therapist I'd been seeing occasionally since the pandemic began. I hadn't planned to discuss family issues. Our sessions usually focused on work stress, but today's revelations poured out of me. What you're describing is a family system that's designated you as the responsible one, the rescuer, Dr. Carter explained. These roles get established early and can be very difficult to change because everyone in the system resists the change, often unconsciously. So they'll fight me on this? I asked. Almost certainly, she confirmed. Expect guilt trips, anger, accusations that you're being selfish or have changed. They might even suggest you're having a mental health crisis. This is all predictable when someone changes the dynamics of a dysfunctional system. This psychological framework was incredibly helpful, transforming potential emotional landmines into predictable patterns. Dr. Carter helped me rehearse responses to the manipulation tactics my family would likely employ. For guilt, I understand you're disappointed, but I need to make financial decisions that align with my goals. For anger, I can see you're upset. We can continue this conversation when everyone is calmer. For accusations, I'm making decisions that are right for me. I don't need to justify them. By the end of our session, I felt mentally prepared for Sunday's dinner. Rather than canceling, I decided to attend as planned. I wanted to observe their manipulation tactics with my new awareness. I wanted to see if they would actually attempt to execute the plan I'd overheard. Remember, Dr. Carter said before we ended the call, changing patterns takes time and consistency. There will be moments when your resolve weakens. That's normal. Just return to your boundaries. I spent Saturday strengthening my support system, calling friends I'd neglected while prioritizing family obligations. I cleaned my apartment, worked out at the gym, and prepared myself mentally for what was coming. The anger had settled into a cool determination. I wasn't going to explode at my family. That would only confirm their potential narrative that I was being irrational. Instead, I would be calm, clear, and unmanipulable. The showdown, Sunday dinner confrontation Sunday, arrived with a knot of tension in my stomach, but clarity in my mind. As I drove to my parents' house, I reminded myself of the truth. I was not responsible for Alexander's debts. I was not obligated to sacrifice my financial security for someone who wouldn't do the same for me. And most importantly, saying no didn't make me a bad daughter or sister. It made me a healthy adult with appropriate boundaries. I arrived at my parents' house at 5 sharp, the same time I'd arrived for countless Sunday dinners before. Yet everything felt different. The familiar blue house with its neat garden seemed like a stage set now, a facade hiding the manipulation that had unfolded behind its walls for decades. I noticed details I'd overlooked before. The new patio furniture that must have cost at least $2,000. The recently installed landscape lighting. My mother's new diamond earrings glinting as she opened the door. None of these purchases aligned with their claims of financial struggle when they needed to borrow money from me. Vanessa, my mother enveloped me in a hug that lasted too long, her perfume overwhelming. We missed you the other day. Hospital emergencies are so unpredictable, aren't they? Her tone held the perfect blend of sympathy and admiration. It was a manipulation tactic I now recognized, establishing my identity as the hardworking, self-sacrificing daughter before the financial ask. Nature of the job, I replied neutrally, handing her the bottle of wine I'd brought. Not the expensive brand I usually selected to impress them, but a mid-range option, a small, active boundary setting. My father emerged from his study, reading glasses perched on his nose. There's our medical professional. How's hospital life treating you? He hugged me briefly, then added with calculated casualness, any exciting career news lately? The fishing for information about my bonus was so transparent now that I saw it clearly. Nothing special, I lied smoothly. Same challenges, different day. The slight disappointment in his eyes confirmed my suspicions. Is Alexander here yet? I asked, moving toward the living room. He's running a bit late, my mother replied. You know your brother, always so many irons in the fire. I nodded, thinking of the irons that had created his $75,000 debt. I'll help you in the kitchen, I offered, falling into my usual role while observing everything with new eyes. In the kitchen, evidence of their financial disconnect continued. A newsstand mixer sat on the counter, still with the price tag partially visible, $399. Premium ingredients lined the countertops, imported Italian olive oil, specialty cheeses, organic vegetables. My parents had always lived slightly beyond their means. But now I wondered how much of that lifestyle had been subsidized by my loans. Alexander arrived 45 minutes late, breezing in with the confidence of someone who knows they'll be forgiven anything. Traffic was insane, he announced without apology. He wore designer jeans and a casual blazer that probably cost more than my entire outfit. On his wrist gleamed a watch I recognized as a Tag Heuer. Easily $4,000. So much for his desperate debt situation. He hugged me with one arm, a performative gesture that never involved actual affection. How's my big sister, the healthcare hero? The slight emphasis on big was another subtle dig. At 32, I was 4 years older, but also carried about 20 pounds more than his gym-sculpted frame. I'm well, I replied, studying him openly. Nice watch. A flash of something, guilt, annoyance, crossed his face before his charm reasserted itself. This old thing? Had it for ages. Lie. The style had only been released 3 months ago. I knew because a doctor I worked with had the same one and had mentioned its recent purchase. Dinner progressed with an undercurrent of tension I'd never noticed before. My mother served her signature lasagna, my favorite, as promised, while peppering the conversation with comments about family loyalty and support. That's what makes the Williams special, she said, refilling wine glasses. We always come through for each other, no matter what. My father steered the conversation toward finances with practiced subtlety. The hospital must be doing well despite everything. I read that healthcare salaries are at an all-time high. He paused, then added, especially for management positions. I took a small bite of lasagna, no longer tasting the food I once loved. Some organizations are doing better than others. Mine has had budget cuts. Alexander jumped in, setting up his play. Speaking of finances, I've been exploring an amazing investment opportunity. His eyes gleamed with practiced enthusiasm. It's in cryptocurrency, a special pre-launch offering that's only available to selected investors. I nodded, waiting for the pitch. The minimum buy-in is $50,000, he continued. But the projected returns are incredible. 3 to 5 times investment within 6 months. Sounds too good to be true, I remarked mildly. That's what I thought, my mother exclaimed. But Alexander has done his research. He showed your father and me all the projections. My father cleared his throat. We were thinking of creating a family investment pool, combining resources to take advantage of this opportunity. And there it was, the ask wrapped in the guise of benefiting everyone rather than bailing out Alexander. Tell me more about this investment, I said, setting down my fork. Who's the company? What's their track record? Alexander's confidence faltered slightly. It's a private offering, very exclusive. The company is called Future Coin Technologies. And their history? How long have they been in business? They're new, but the founders came from established firms, he said vaguely. Which firms? I'd have to check my notes for the specific names. I nodded, taking a sip of water. And then I delivered the decisive blow. And the $75,000 debt you need to pay off. Is that related to this investment? The silence that descended over the dining room was absolute. My mother's fork clattered against her plate. My father's face drained of color. Alexander's expression shifted from shock to ugly rage. How did you? He began. I heard everything, I said calmly. Tuesday afternoon, I came by to share some good news. I was outside your bedroom door when you were discussing how to manipulate me into paying Alexander's debts. My mother recovered first. Vanessa, you misunderstood what you heard. I didn't misunderstand anything, I interrupted, my voice steady. Dad said, and I quote, "Don't worry about the debt, Alexander. We'll make your sister pay. She'll never say no to family." Then you all laughed about how I'm such a responsible pushover. You were eavesdropping on a private conversation. My father blustered, attempting to shift blame. I was about to knock when I heard you planning to lie to me. I corrected him. Mom suggested telling me it was for medical bills. Alexander thought framing it as an investment opportunity would appeal to me more. Like the one you just invented. Alexander's handsome face contorted with ugly rage. You always think you're so much better than me, don't you? Perfect Vanessa with her nursing career and her responsible lifestyle. I don't think I'm better than you, I replied. I just refuse to be your personal bailout fund anymore. After everything we've done for you, my mother cried, tears springing to her eyes on cue. The performance was impressive, but no longer effective. What exactly have you done for me? I asked quietly. I worked through school. I paid my own way. I bought my own car and home. Meanwhile, you've given Alexander everything while taking from me. My father's strategy shifted to minimization. You're blowing this out of proportion. It was just a conversation, not a conspiracy. Families don't plot to exploit each other, I countered. And this isn't just about Tuesday. I've calculated how much money I've loaned this family over the past 10 years. Nearly $50,000 that was never repaid. Alexander snorted. That's what family does. No, I said firmly. That's what enablers and users do. And I'm done with both roles. I stood up, surprising myself with how calm I felt. I've moved my money where you can't access it. I've documented every loan none of you have repaid, and I'm establishing clear boundaries going forward. You would abandon your family over money, my mother demanded, her manipulation shifting to its final form, questioning my moral character. This isn't about money, I said. It's about respect and honesty, neither of which you've shown me. You are willing to lie to my face and laugh behind my back. That's not family. My calm demeanor, honed through therapy, disarmed their usual tactics. So that's it? Alexander sneered. You're just walking away. I'm walking away from being exploited, I clarified. If you want a relationship with me going forward, it will be built on mutual respect, not what I can give you. My father stood, his face flushed with anger. You're being ridiculous and ungrateful. After all, we've sacrificed for you. Name one sacrifice, I challenged. One thing you've done for me that you didn't do twice over for Alexander. His mouth opened and closed, but no examples came. I picked up my purse and walked toward the door, turning back one last time. I love you all. That hasn't changed. But love without boundaries isn't love. It's exploitation. When you're ready to have an honest relationship, I'll be here. Until then, I'm taking care of myself. I walked out, closing the door gently behind me. In my car, I took a deep breath, surprised by the lightness I felt. For the first time in my adult life, I had stood up for myself against the people who had trained me to put their needs first. It hurt, yes, but beneath the pain was something new and precious, self-respect. The storm and the silence. Enduring the backlash, the barrage began before I even reached home. My phone pinged with texts from my mother alternating between guilt trips. I can't believe you would hurt us like this, and attempts to minimize what had happened. You completely misunderstood everything. My father's approach was more direct, voicemails in his stern accountant voice explaining how family financial support was completely normal and how I was overreacting to standard family dynamics. Alexander's messages vacillated wildly between threatening, "You'll regret turning your back on family," and apologetic, "I'm sorry if you felt, but I really do need help." The transparency of the manipulation was almost laughable now that I could recognize it. I didn't respond to any of them that night. Instead, I poured a glass of wine, ran a bath, and allowed myself to feel the complex emotions washing through me. Grief for the family relationship I had thought I had, anger at years of exploitation, and, underneath it all, a growing sense of liberation. By Monday morning, the communication strategy had escalated. My mother had called my cousin Danielle, my Aunt Maria, and even my elderly grandmother to enlist them in pressuring me. Aunt Maria called as I was getting ready for work. "Vanessa, your mother is absolutely distraught," she began without preamble. "She says you had some kind of breakdown at dinner yesterday and accused the family of terrible things." I took a deep breath, remembering Dr. Carter's advice about staying calm. "That's not what happened, Aunt Maria. I overheard them planning to manipulate me into paying Alexander's debts. When I confronted them, they didn't deny it." "Well, I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding," she said dismissively. "Your mother said they were just discussing family finances, and you took it personally. Did she mention that Alexander needs $75,000 or that they were laughing about how I never say no to family?" Aunt Maria paused. $75,000? That can't be right. It is. And it's not the first time they've used me as Alexander's personal bailout fund. Another pause. Look, I know Alexander has had his struggles, but your parents would never intentionally take advantage of you. They love you. I believe they love me in their way, I acknowledged, but they've been using me financially for years. I'm simply setting boundaries now. Boundaries, she repeated as if the word were foreign. Vanessa, there are no boundaries in family. Family is about being there for each other no matter what. Even when it's one-sided, even when it involves lies and manipulation. Vanessa, my aunt said heavily, you've always been so independent, so different from the rest of us. Maybe that's why you don't understand how families work. Her words were meant to make me feel like the outsider, the one with the problem. A week ago, they might have worked. Today, they simply confirmed I was making the right decision. I understand exactly how our family works, I said gently. That's why I'm changing my role in it. Throughout the week, I discovered more troubling information. My cousin Diana, who worked at the bank where my parents had their accounts, called me privately. I shouldn't be telling you this, she whispered into the phone. But after what you told Aunt Maria, I thought you should know. Your parents took out a second mortgage 3 months ago. The amount was exactly $75,000. The pieces clicked into place. They already paid Alexander's debt. Looks that way. And from what I can see, they're struggling to make the payments. Your dad's retirement account shows multiple withdrawals, too. The revelation should have made me angry. But instead, I felt a profound sadness. My parents had risked their retirement security for Alexander yet again, and they had planned to recoup the money from me rather than holding him accountable. They were also victims of Alexander's dysfunction, trapped in their own enabling patterns. Through careful conversations with family members, I pieced together more of the truth. Alexander's import business was a cover story. In reality, he had accumulated massive gambling debts to some dangerous people in Atlantic City. The investment opportunity was entirely fictional. A story created to extract money from me. The pressure intensified as the week progressed. My father called my supervisor at the hospital, claiming concern about my mental health and unusual behavior, a blatant attempt to undermine my credibility. Fortunately, my professional reputation was solid, and the attempt backfired when my supervisor mentioned it to me sympathetically. Family estrangement is more common than people realize, she told me during our weekly meeting. My brother and I didn't speak for 5 years until he got treatment for his addiction. Sometimes distance is the healthiest choice. Her support reminded me that I wasn't alone in this experience. At Jessica's suggestion, I joined an online support group for adults dealing with financially exploitative families. The stories shared there mirrored my own experience, with eerie similarity. My parents remortgaged their house 3 times to bail out my brother, one woman wrote. When they ran out of equity, they turned to me. When I refused, they told the entire extended family I was abandoning them in their time of need. These stories strengthened my resolve as I endured increasingly desperate tactics from my family. Alexander showed up at my workplace, creating a scene in the lobby until security escorted him out. My mother left tear-filled voicemails describing how she couldn't sleep or eat because of my cruelty. My father alternated between stern lectures about family obligation and thinly veiled threats about being written out of their will. 10 days after the confrontation, I received their ultimatum in the form of a group text. Vanessa, we've given you time to reconsider your irrational position. Alexander's situation is critical. As family, you have a responsibility to help. If you choose not to contribute to resolving this family crisis, we will have to reconsider your place in this family. The choice is yours. I read the message multiple times, feeling a strange calm settle over me. They were attempting their final and most powerful manipulation, threatening complete rejection unless I complied. In the past, this implicit threat had always loomed beneath their requests, making me anxious to please them at any cost. Now, I recognized it for what it was, emotional blackmail. I composed my response carefully. I love you all and hope for healing in our relationship. However, I will not be providing financial assistance. I respect your right to make your own choices about our relationship going forward. Within minutes, my phone exploded with angry messages, but I didn't read them. Instead, I blocked their numbers temporarily, giving myself space to continue healing without constant emotional assault. The choice they had presented, compliance or rejection, was a false dichotomy. I was choosing a third option, healthy boundaries and self-respect. That night, I slept peacefully for the first time in weeks. No longer torn between family loyalty and self-preservation. The path forward would be difficult, but it was clear. And in that clarity, I found unexpected freedom. New beginnings, defining family on my own terms 6 months can change everything. As the autumn leaves turned Chicago into a canvas of orange and gold, I sat on my balcony with a cup of hot chocolate, reflecting on how much had shifted since that April evening when I overheard my family's betrayal. The most obvious change was the silence. After 3 months of emotional siege, calls, texts, enlisted relatives, even a tear-filled ambush at my favorite grocery store, my family had finally accepted that their usual tactics wouldn't work. The constant communication had dwindled to occasional formal messages, a birthday card from my mother with no personal note, a group email about Thanksgiving plans I wasn't specifically invited to attend. The silence hurt at first. There were nights I cried myself to sleep, mourning the family connection I had valued so deeply. But gradually, the silence created space for healing and growth. Without the constant drain of their emotional and financial demands, I found energy for other relationships and pursuits. My condo, once just a place to sleep between hospital shifts and family obligations, became a true sanctuary. I repainted the living room a warm terracotta, hung art that spoke to me rather than matching my mother's taste, and adopted a rescue cat named Luna who greeted me with purring affection when I returned from work. Professionally, I thrived without the undercurrent of family stress. 3 months after our confrontation, I was promoted to Director of Nursing for the entire Critical Care Division, a position that came with a substantial salary increase and greater influence over patient care protocols. The achievement felt purely mine, not something I needed to downplay around Alexander or leverage for family approval. The most surprising development came in early October when my father suffered a minor heart attack. I learned about it through my cousin Diana, not from my parents directly. After a moment's hesitation, I went to the hospital, not out of obligation, but compassion. My father looked smaller somehow in the hospital bed, vulnerable in a way I'd never seen him. When I entered his room, his eyes widened with genuine surprise. "Vanessa," he said hoarsely. "You came?" I nodded, taking the chair beside his bed. "How are you feeling?" "Like an elephant is sitting on my chest," he admitted. "But they say I was lucky. No major damage." We sat in awkward silence for several minutes before he spoke again, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "The doctor who treated me," he said, "stress was a contributing factor. Financial stress." He paused, staring at the ceiling. "Alexander's debts, they were worse than we told you. The $75,000 was just the beginning. There was another $100,000 we didn't mention." The amount shocked me, but I kept my expression neutral. "I'm sorry to hear that. We had to sell the vacation property in Michigan," he said, "the one we were going to retire to. And your mother's parents' antiques. Still not enough." "What happened with Alexander?" I asked. My father's face aged another decade as he answered. "He disappeared, left town about a month ago. Said he had another opportunity in California, and his debts left them for us." For the first time in my life, I saw my father's eyes fill with tears. "You were right, Vanessa. We enabled him. We failed him by never setting limits. And we failed you by expecting you to clean up our mess." The apology, however incomplete, was more than I had expected. It didn't erase the hurt or fully acknowledge the pattern of exploitation, but it was a start. "I can't fix this financially," I said gently. "Even if I wanted to, it wouldn't help Alexander in the long run." "I know," my father said, surprising me. "That's not why I'm telling you this. I want you to know that I see it now. What we did, how unfair it was." My mother never reached the same level of understanding. When she arrived at the hospital and found me there, her response cycled between tearful gratitude for my presence and subtle hints about their financial situation. The lifetime pattern of manipulation couldn't be broken in a single day. But I maintained my boundaries with calm consistency. "I'm here for emotional support," I told her clearly, "not financial assistance." Over the following months, I established careful, limited contact with my parents. Sunday dinners were replaced by occasional lunch meetings in public places with clear time boundaries. I deflected personal financial questions and changed the subject when Alexander's name came up, which was frequently. Meanwhile, my own support network flourished. Jessica remained my steadfast ally, celebrating my boundaries and progress. My therapy sessions with Dr. Carter continued, focusing on rebuilding my identity separate from my role as family caretaker. I formed deeper connections with colleagues and reconnected with old friends I'd neglected while prioritizing family demands. The most unexpected connection came through the support group for family financial exploitation. There I met others who understood exactly what I'd experienced. Together we formed a local in-person group that met monthly for coffee and conversation. These strangers turned friends provided validation and perspective that my biological family never could. In a moment of inspiration, I worked with 2 group members to create a workshop for the hospital's community education program, Financial Boundaries and Family Dynamics. The first session filled to capacity, revealing how many people struggled with similar issues, but had never found language or support for them. Standing at the front of that classroom, sharing my experience to help others, I felt a sense of purpose that transcended the pain of family estrangement. My story, however difficult, could serve as a flashlight for others finding their way through similar darkness. The unfolding journey, a path of self-respect today. As I watch Luna chase fallen leaves across my balcony, I reflect on the complex journey of the past 6 months. The family I was born into may never fully understand or respect my boundaries. Alexander remains absent, occasionally sending my parents requests for money from his new life in California. My mother still attempts subtle manipulation during our limited interactions. My father, chastened by his health scare, shows glimmers of understanding, but frequently backslides into old patterns. Yet, I've discovered that family can be defined by actions rather than blood. It can include friends who respect your boundaries, colleagues who value your contributions, a therapist who guides your growth, group members who share your struggles, and even a rescue cat who greets you with unconditional affection. I've learned that saying no isn't selfish. It's sometimes the most self-respectful choice available. I've come to understand that the discomfort I felt, the guilt, was often a sign I was changing unhealthy patterns, not an indication I was doing something wrong. I realized that financial support without accountability isn't actually helping someone, it's enabling their continued dysfunction. Most importantly, I've learned that my worth isn't measured by my usefulness to others or my willingness to sacrifice myself. It exists inherently, requiring no justification or performance. This was the culmination of my journey, moving from a conditional self-worth to an unconditional one. The journey hasn't been easy and it isn't over. There are still days I question my decisions, moments I miss the family relationships I wished I had rather than the exploitative ones I actually experienced. But with each boundary I maintain, each healthy relationship I nurture, each act of self-care I practice, the path becomes clearer. If you're watching this and recognizing your own family patterns in my story, know that you're not alone. Setting boundaries doesn't mean you don't love your family. It means you're loving yourself enough to require respect and honesty. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with loved ones? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to protect themselves, even from family. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, real love lifts you up. It doesn't drain you dry.